Howdy. Welcome to our little yeah, our little release for a little tool we generated called AppLockerGEN, and I'm excited to share it. It's kind of neat. Been digging into lots of things related to like attack surface reduction, ASR, um, AppLocker, and I think next will be WDAC. Trying to find part of my research process. We talked about this last time for ASR Gen. Part of my research process is when I'm digging into these different tools or utilities like this is I want to break it down to understand how to create them, create like a policy, how to use it in PowerShell, what the logs look like, and my particular case, I'm writing a blog for it, and then also shipping new security content for ASR or AppLocker. And so, yeah, let's just dive in. Hi, it's Mike, threat researcher here at Splunk. And obviously, we like to geek out on atomics on a Friday. So that's where a lot of this happens. And so, yeah, so today, very excited to release this. I've been working on it for a little while now. The repo is available. It's called AppLockerGEN. And one day I'll figure out like how to really name my tools, or maybe I could like pay someone to like name them for me, because it's basically the same as like ASR Gen. Trying to find the repo link, and I'll share it in the chat if you want to follow along at home. But yeah, and then also you can access the site right now. It's live. There's ASR or AppLocker. I'm going to get confused. It's AppLockerGen.streamlit.app. So first, here's the repo for those who would like to click along at home. And then here is the link as well for the Streamlit site, right there. So two little links, and you can go and dig in, and everything's written in Python. It's really easy to understand, and Streamlit is great because you can pretty much do everything in there. Yeah, it's just powerful. So yeah, let me find out what the next slide is. Okay, cool. Let me share my screen. Let's go ahead and just dive into the site, and then we'll do a live demo digging into what it looks like on Windows. I think that makes sense. And let me just bring this window over here so I can see what you're seeing, because that's kind of cool. Sweet. So you probably have already clicked the link. That's exciting. Thank you for clicking a link from somebody randomly on the internet. But in this particular case, you got your landing page. You can watch this video live while we're live. That's cool. Or you can follow up on this afterwards. So if you haven't used AppLocker before, I've known about this tool for too long now, and I always find the Microsoft Docs to be so complex, and I just want to get straight to the point. I don't have all day to read these long docs and whatnot. So I'm just like, hey, like, let me get a policy. A, how do I use the policy? B, and then, where does it go? Where's the events come from? Things like that. I just want data. And so I started looking around at different AppLocker projects out there. There's one from Oddbar Mo, which we'll share some stuff from him in a bit. And then there's also there's an old tool out there called AppLocker. AppLocker was used like a PowerShell utility. It's pretty old now, I think. I don't think it's been updated in a few years. But AppLocker allowed you to kind of like use and manipulate the policies through the command line. And then Windows, Microsoft itself has a couple different AppLocker commandlets that you can use too, which are pretty neat. So the site today is not finished. I really wanted to get it out because I wanted to get some feedback, because I don't know how people are using AppLocker out there in the wild. And so in my particular use case, I'm like using a range. I'm just running some stuff. Things are either getting blocked or they're not, and I have to go and figure out why. So yeah, so on the left is your little menu, and to kind of start, it's as simple as clicking through the site here. A couple of features I noticed that were popular was, at least with AppLocker, was the policy combiner, or being able to combine two policies. And so what I did is I just more or less kind of duplicated the same thing inside of the Streamlit app. And let me pull up my policies because I forgot to do that. So within the project itself, if you're looking at the repo at all, it does have a bunch of default policies. And those policies were borrowed from, well, one's really old that I developed many, many years ago, but a lot of them were actually borrowed from Oddvar Mo's project. And I'll show his stuff here in just a second. But so in this case, you're looking at this and you're like, Mike, what are you going to do? So you could drag over, I think. Oh, yeah, I got to open it up. 1 second. Here we go. You could drag over your AppLocker policies. Where'd my window go? There it is. And it's as easy as taking two of them. In my case, I'm taking the EXE and DLL policy from Oddvar, and I'm just combining them. And so, yeah, it'll basically just jam these together. And then you can copy it and just go and put it inside your group policy and whatnot. I'll show that here in a second too. But it's as easy as that if you want to just combine them. The essentials page, I'm still working on. I have a few more things to add, but the high level is I cover the basis of the PowerShell commandlets. And this is actually pretty cool. If you've never used like the AppLocker policy or different the commandlets for it, you can run like this test one here. You could take your policy and say like, hey, will this PS1 script run or be denied with this policy? And so it'll tell you it's denied by default, which is pretty cool. And then if they actually had a matching rule inside the policy, one that was specific, say to like PS1 files inside a temp, you did not have the default rules or whatnot, it would tell you the matching rule name or ID, which is pretty cool. Event viewer, we'll go into that. And then a long time ago now, Paul shared a really cool PowerShell command that basically dumps out all the event codes for a channel. And so in this case, I just dumped them all out, the ones that were at least important to me for AppLocker, and which helps to steer where you want to go look within the data and whatnot. Just some policy rule collection stuff and how it works and whatnot. But yeah, I'll have more details in there soon. I've been debating on how in depth I need to make it. AppLocker is a little more, it's a little bit more straightforward than ASR, but it has a lot more depth to it compared to ASR. So you probably, if you're at ASR-Gen's page, you'll notice the essentials there is a lot deeper. All right. So you want to create a policy, or you want to just play with this and see what happens. When you want to upload some different things to it, see what it does, you can simply drag and drop files to here. On the back end, if you're looking at it on the repo, this particular page uses the leaf module, and it will extract out the hash rule and publisher rule, or the publisher, and generate the hash. I'm trying to find a binary here to drop in. I, of course, was not ready enough. Let me find a little tiny one, and I can't find the little tiny one. Wait, there's one called payload.exe. Let's see what it does. Okay, so you can see here, it generated a quick little policy. You can change the enforcement. You want to go to audit, you could change it to audit, and it's going to specifically look for this hash and hash, the source name, and then that source file length is all automatically generated for you. And I don't believe it has a publisher, so that's probably why it didn't show up. And if I was ready, let me find a driver. I have little drivers around here somewhere. Maybe not. Let's see, do we have a driver? Yeah, I basically made this page to play with drivers because I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like, drop a driver in here and it rips up all the data, tells you everything you wanted to know. Here we go. Get rid of payload. Yeah, nice fluid little interface. So if you're just trying to generate things and whatnot, it moves pretty good. Oh yeah, so here's the driver. It auto updated so fast. Hash rule, and then here's that publisher piece right here. So it just extracts that. Something I did is if you look at a pre-built policy from Oddvar, he you'll notice there's one for like Lobins, and Lobins in particular will his Lobin policy in particular will focus on blocking, say, like install util. And this section right here more or less says block every version of install util. And so it's asterisk asterisk on his policy. And so when I was working on this, I was like, there may be an instance where you don't want to block every instance of a potential, this is a vulnerable driver, but it doesn't mean every version of this vulnerable driver is bad. Or say you're looking at executables, you're like, hey, there's a particular version we do need in my organization. I want to block all the other versions. So in this case, I kind of hard coded it to make it kind of easy of just like only this version. If you know lull drivers, there might be 15, 20 drivers, or like the Mimikatz driver. There's a ton of them. And so it will end up having, if the version info is different for each one, it will end up having a new one for each one instead of a range. And I made it that way just to kind of make it as a safety. But you could always just come in here and wildcard it and call it good. It may or may not update. Oh yeah, I think you have to change it down here, or not change it at all. Oh, you can't change it there either. I have something else to share. Okay, so you can do that. So then, and if you didn't want publisher, you could just click the cool little box and it goes away. Yeah, so clicking to the pre-built policies again, some of these come from Oddbart, and then I also threw in some old ones that I had a long time ago, which is the block extensions one. I also have, I think I created this one based off of my Windows 11 machine, and it's kind of long, but it's mostly complete and very random and interesting. But if you're testing around and want to play with them, click through. Oddbars are these ones right here. They're nicely named and formatted: publisher block, path block. And you can see pretty quickly, what these are doing. So like in this case, this is like a DLL block rule policy, and I think so. Yeah. Or yeah, deny. It'll enforce blocking DLLs out of directories basically, and pretty sure. And yeah, there's a bunch of them in here. So something, as I was looking at these, let me go to the exe one. That's your Lobins one. When I was looking at these, I wanted a way to have a way to kind of look at them and modify them or see what an AppLocker policy had. And I figure if you're an organization and you have, and maybe you have like one giant policy can contain hash rules, publishers, and paths, and scripts and whatnot. So I made this, and this is using a Streamlit module called, what's it called? I already forgot. But it's using a really neat little module that will tell you, it's called it's so easy, code editor, Streamlit code editor, that tells you, rips out all this stuff right here. But the one thing I wanted it to do was have a way for you to come in here and edit this however you want. And if you're not using like VS Code locally with like an XML module or something, you could do it all here on the site. So by default, you'll see your policy that you just pasted. That's cool. I know there's 38 publisher rules. So if you just want to see your publisher rules, you can come in here and you'll see all the publisher rules. And here's that mention of the version info. So wildcard block all command.exe. That sounds like a fun Friday afternoon project. There's a bunch of others in here. So, but yeah. And then, but you're like, hey, Mike, I don't want to block, or hey, org, we don't want to block that block command.exe. You can come in here and just modify your policy like that, which is cool. And this actually, being it's a little code editor in the browser, it does use VS Code shortcuts. So if you're used to VS Code or Vim or Emacs or Sublime, it's all built in. I don't know how to use them, but if you scroll down, this policy is really big. Kind of midway through, there's a little T for shortcuts. Brings up a little window that shows you all the shortcuts here. So if you want to geek out within the browser and modify things, you could do that here. So again, you're editing your policy and you're like, hey, WMIC is actually kind of important in my business. I'm going to just delete this. And so you're like, yeah, just delete that. Uh-oh, got a bunch of errors here. So what do I fix, right? So obviously Control Z, bring it back, and then kind of start from the bottom and delete. But I like that because if you attempt to do this, it does throw the errors. You know, get something wrong in here, it'll throw down the errors for you, which is cool. And then at the end, it does a little validation. When you hit run, it'll validate that it's a proper XML file, so that like what I found when I was geeking out with AppLocker is if you import an improper XML formatted file, it just throws an error and it's like, yeah, this bracket's missing or something. And like, okay, well, where do I start if a bracket's missing? Which bracket? Like where? This file is like forever characters long. So at least in here, you can see pretty quickly, like, okay, yeah, there's something missing. It must be right around here, whatever it may be, right? And then you could do this again and get it back. So I thought that was cool. And then if you're like me and you just wanted to generate really quick ones for like a path, I was just my example one has always just kind of been ctemp for a lot of my testing, and so I don't really mind the scripts. So we'll just run path and I'll hit generate, and it generates a really just basic, deny policy, or block policy here for anything in ctemp, which I thought was cool. So that's the app. Probably spent too much time on the app, but I get the gist of it. So let's see. Let's go to sharing my screen and let's play with this and check it out inside of a Windows VM, if I can find it. There it is. This is just a Windows 11 box. Got to actually show my screen. Oh no, is it not going to work? Uh-oh. That's sad. Yep, I think I killed it. Bummer. Well, live demo fails. I have no other screenshots. Well, I was just going to show the event viewer, things like that, and not fair, huh? Bummer. We'll figure it out. So I was just going to show event viewer. I wish I could like capture screenshots and put them in here, but I can't even do that. It's totally dead. Bummer. Event viewer, show what the blocks look like, and I could at least show you what the data looks like inside of a sim, but I can't even show that. Man, I don't want to leave. I need Paul. Paul needs to be here. He's not here. Trying to think quick, how can I get through screenshots in here live? I don't know. It's gonna take some work. So I'm bummed about that. I'll have to redo the demo. Bummer. So yeah, from there, we'll just jump along. And a couple things that I wanted to add to it. Nas had some great feedback on a few things. If you notice when you're looking at the editor, the code editor, it by default says like your policy is broken until you hit run. Little things like that. I'll get some of those things cleaned up. Something I started writing was a way for you to upload a EVTX and compare it to a policy, so you can see whether the data inside like a sysmon EVTX or .log file in XML, compare it to an AppLocker policy, and then you can kind of see whether it will block it or not, or audit it, whatever's in there. So I thought that was pretty cool. If you're interested in that, let me know. I'm not sure the true market of AppLocker out there just yet. I had another way to generate policies, more or less was just a way for you to tell it what directories you would like to scan, and it'll pump out a PowerShell script. And you can just run this on a machine and it'll go through and get like all the hash data and the path data and pump out a little policy for you, which is pretty cool. It was neat. I do have atomic tests, and I was going to show those today. But again, if you've used AppLocker before, and played with like the default rules, you'll know pretty quickly that it blocks with the default rules mostly everything outside of those approved paths that it generates by default. So whatever policy you are deploying, you want to either like make it specific by paths or by like file extension and whatnot based on like auditing within your environment. So it's just one thing to kind of keep in mind when you're playing. But the atomic tests are cool. I'll get those shipped out. They're mostly done. There's like a VBA, a VBE. I think I have an HTA and stuff in there too, so I could geek out on those different things. But everything's just kind of based on feedback and how I've been playing with this. Tell me how you're using it or AppLocker in general. Like, is there something like a huge pain point with AppLocker that you're just like, this thing's so hard to do X and Y? Send it my way. I'm really curious. Maybe AppLockerGEN can help you, where we can add a new page to it to help you. A couple things I learned. I went in assuming that you really did have to specify everything that you wanted to be prevented. Found out that those default rules are just like, if you only have the two allowed default rules, everything outside of that just gets blocked, which is pretty wild. But if if you deploy default rules in your org, you probably end up with lots of chaos. So probably if you wanted to, put default rules out there in audit mode and just see what happens. Something else I learned, I didn't know this, but with the AppLocker, it doesn't apply to the administrator user. And I don't know if that means it applies to every user in the administrator's group. But for the administrator user itself, none of the policies are applied. So in my demo, I would just show logging in or doing a run as to PowerShell and then run the different atomic tests that we have in there. So that's kind of like a little thing. That was kind of an assumption. I thought it just applied to everybody on the machine, which it doesn't. So I thought that was neat. Let's see what other notes are on there. Granularity is pretty important. If you read Oddvar's repo, and all those links are on the site as well, which I would share that, but I can't even share my screen anymore. But yeah, all the links are on there. But he mentions, when you are deploying AppLocker in an enterprise, you'll want to create different group policy objects and take like the exe one, apply it to this object for exes and deploy that, and kind of just go down the list. Obviously, your audit mode's your friend. You can just deploy audit and see what's happening out there in the wild. The data is really rich, and I wish I could show you in the demo how it looks because it's actually really good. The data is really cool, and you can capture all the event logs and ship them to wherever you want to. Obviously, or you can run it locally and just like parse through with PowerShell and, kind of do little stats and, which files are running from which a lot. And you can filter that out and whatnot. So pretty cool. And yeah, I need to come up with some better project names, and I need to get my screen share working, which I'm really sad about that. So one big thing I noticed, and I'm leaving out WDAC right now, is if you do deploy ASR and AppLocker, and I'm not talking like even like constrained language mode in PowerShell or disabling PowerShell or whatever it may be. These two things alone are extremely powerful for reducing that attack surface. So if you're looking at either or both, definitely give them a good look. It's super powerful. I was kind of geeking out on it today because I was like, well, what if I deploy or what if I, tell it to just block everything, which is default rules, and, run something out of ctemp? And it's just like, wow, it's kind of like, it's why they come up with all these like low bin bypasses, right? Like install util and ms build, or just loading things up left and right. But using both of these, like you're kind of going from, initial access using all the different ASR stuff, and then down to like AppLocker, whether you allow things to run out of certain paths or preventing things and just different, Windows script host things out of these directories, or all script hosts running from them. So there's a lot of power in these, and I hope that you're able to check the tool out, give it a spin, and deploy some AppLocker maybe in a lab, and see what happens. But yeah, thank you for listening. I think there's a couple folks here. If you're catching up on this afterwards, thanks for checking it out. I will try to get my machine to work and we'll do a better live demo. And yeah, thank you again. Check out the site, applockergen.streamlit.app. And yeah, shoot over any GitHub issues or questions or requests. And I will see if I can get another session going where my screen will be shared. But thank you all again. Have a good day.